Sorry, many of you already know me, but for those that don't, my name is Erica Smith. I'm a lifelong resident of Lewis County, most of that at Krogan, and a 1991 graduate of Beef River. I've been married to Bruce for over 25 years. We have 3 precious children. Our girls, Regan, who's 19, Peyton, 14, and our son, Cameron, in the middle at 16. I've had several secretarial jobs, but for the past 9 years, I've worked for Dr. Linebecker and Dr. Palmer at Lavo Medical in Lavo. When I found out about this evening's event, I timidly offered some assistance to Julie through a Facebook chat. My exact words were, "I'm a little frightened to offer this, but let me know what I might be able to do to help." That was not good. After a few polite sentences back and forth, she wrote, "Would you speak?" Time to step away from the computer, Erica. I did not, however. Eventually, after a sad attempt at some humor, I replied, "That just escalated from a little frightened to drop-dead terrified." But you all know Julie, right? And here I stand. Though bless her heart, she did get Mitch to let me sit in the audience instead of up on stage. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not even a private speaker. I find conversations very difficult and usually think of the right thing to say long after the conversation is ended. So if I walk away from this tonight with something coherent, you will have witnessed a miracle. I'm not an expert in anything related to drugs or alcohol, but I'm the wife of an alcoholic and the mother of 3 children that I pray will not be, and what I can speak of is my experience. Maya Angelou said, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you." So I'm here to tell you our story, hoping that one person can be helped by it in some small way, because that's the only reason I can think of for us to have endured the help we have, so that we can help others do the same. The Cliff Note version of our story: alcohol addiction nearly destroyed our perfect family. It didn't happen overnight, and we never saw it coming, but somehow we ended up right in the middle of it. The small group that I've developed with through our church recently did a study last fall titled Guardrails by Andy Stanley. His challenge is for us to stop flirting with disaster and establish some personal guardrails. We're all familiar with the guardrails along the road. They're placed there to direct and protect us as we travel in our vehicles. He equates those physical guardrails to those that we all have in our personal lives, whether they were put there intentionally or not. Personally or morally, we have the lines that we draw and intend not to cross. This is a personal guardrail. We create the line to protect ourselves against harm. On occasion, we bump into these guardrails, but recognize the fact and redirect our path to a safer area. Other times, we ignore the guardrail and careen through and down a dangerous cliff. Sometimes we survive, and sometimes we do not. My cousin that grew up out of the area remembers asking me when I was probably in junior high what the big problems were here at Beef River. Apparently, at the time, I told her it was alcohol. I don't recall the conversation at all. It's ironic how it all came back around. I know there were lessons in high school health class about substance abuse, and I paid attention and I listened, but I didn't think it would pertain to me. I was safe, and if I was safe, my kids must be safe, right? Bruce and I come from great Christian families. Neither of us had any childhood traumas. Both sets of parents and all 4 sets of grandparents never divorced, and 9 out of those 12 people were alive to hold all 3 of our children. 6 of them still are. Bruce's parents never drink, and mine do only on special occasions. Neither one of us was offered any drugs of any kind in high school, not even a cigarette, and to this day, I have not laid eyes on any illegal drugs. Yes, I've lived a very sheltered life, and in that way I'm okay with that. I was allowed sips of wine at the family table while growing up, but had more fun running my fingers along the edge of the wine glass to make music. My first and last real underage drinking was at a friend's party when I was 15. I remember her mother sitting in the kitchen where the alcohol was. Though I don't recall who handed it to me, I know her mom was the one that purchased it for us. I drank half of that wine cooler and still feel guilty. Mom, I'm sorry. You've probably not heard that before. I've never been drunk. As an adult, I don't know that I've ever had more than 2 glasses of wine or a mixed drink at any event. We were not party goers. When we did choose to go to one of my class's graduation parties up in Belfort, surprise, we stayed for only about an hour because neither one of us was comfortable there. We were a safe couple, nothing at all to worry about. Our family was going to be just fine. After a dozen or so years of marriage, though, I came to the frightening realization that my husband was an alcoholic. I can't recall one time in the 3 years that we dated where I witnessed him drink, and I can only recall 2 times in the next 7 years or so that I saw him drunk. But sometime after that, things changed, life changed. I didn't notice it first, I was too busy. When I did notice, I chose to ignore it for a long time. It will get better, only it didn't. And then, when I couldn't ignore it any longer, things were completely out of control. We went from that perfect family to a non-existent one. Bruce stopped being the husband and parent that we needed him to be, and I doubled up on responsibilities and overdosed on stress and worry. We did very limited things as a family, and the few vacations that we did attempt did not create the special memories that one would expect. Family functions usually pushed me over the edge. It was a rare occasion to go out or to have friends over, and leaving the kids home alone without me became impossible. Bruce stopped going to church, and I made the decision to change churches. At home, we distanced ourselves from each other. We walked on eggshells and stopped communicating. We stopped having fun. The kids had fewer and fewer friends over, and financially we were a mess. At the worst of it, we were even subjected to CPS investigation. This is not something you want to go through. I've never felt such humiliation and fear as I did during that time. At home, it was like we lived with 2 Bruces, the sober one and the drunk one. Most days you never knew who you were going to get, and coming home at the end of the school day for the kids and the work day for me was not usually something to look forward to. It eventually got bad enough that I admit, sadly, I was often relieved when his car was not in the driveway when I got here. We, and I say we because I was as much to blame as Bruce, we put on those masks of happiness, wore them well, and no one was the wiser for a long time. Not our friends, not our coworkers, not our family, or our parents. We even hid a lot of it from the kids, at least it seemed that way at the time. When people did find out, most had a very hard time believing and accepting the truth. Much of that was due to the fact that Bruce almost always drank in isolation. He rarely drank in public except when he was DJing. Stephen King wrote, "We're only as sick as our secrets," and we were very, very sick. Bruce eventually lost his teaching job, and in a way, we all lost home. I had this view of, I had this view of Beef River as our home away from home since we were in kindergarten. We each spent 13 years here, and shortly after college and marriage, he began teaching here, and I would spend hours helping in his classrooms. Eventually, the kids came along, and you know how much time that can take. In various ways, we walked in and out of this building on a daily basis for the past 40 years. Beaver River was our community. When his alcoholism became public, I was amazed at the response from the community in particular. There were some faculty and staff that wrapped us in their arms and loved us in various practical ways, and I'm very thankful for them. They were a vital part of our survival, but there were others that didn't. There were some that I thought were close to us that have come to barely speak to us even today. I haven't decided if it was a better than you mentality or if it was just fear, but I'm finding myself agreeing with this quote that I recently read. If you're struggling and your people are just sitting there watching you struggle, you're not in trouble. We kept a great number of our people through this fight with alcoholism. A lot of you are here today. But we had to learn to get new people too. At some point in the fight, I realized that I may not be able to save Bruce, but I may be able to save myself and the kids. I had to be as honest as I could, first with myself, and then with them, and then with those around us. I had a very difficult time telling them what was going on because I wanted to keep them as innocent as I could. But I had to learn that I could tell them the scary facts without scarring them for life. They know that they are the children of an alcoholic, an addict. They know that they are at risk of becoming the same if they make the wrong choices when trying to cope with the tiny to the overwhelming stressors in their lives. And they know this because I stopped being afraid and I began to be a better parent. Not one of you is immune from addiction. I wish that weren't true, but it is. It may not be in your immediate family right now, but I'm certain that you know other family members or friends that are affected. Most of you know us, and that's a start. You have to know that this can happen to your kids or your spouse or your best friend, or even yourself. But it doesn't have to. If you're here, you've already taken a step toward helping with this epidemic. I've been told that information is power. It's just up to you what you do with it. But admitting there's an issue and putting your fears aside to deal with it certainly is a great beginning. There are several other things that can help as well. As parents, our job is to establish some guardrails or guidelines for our children until they are able to erect their own. When they are toddlers, most of us teach our children not to throw food on the floor or to bite their siblings or to say bad words or to run out into the street after a ball. As they get older, we may teach them to help others or respect their teachers or to be diligent in their schoolwork. It's in our job description. We're supposed to be a parent. We're supposed to be our children's instructor, their moral compass for a while, their guide, their nurse, their judge, and jury at times, their confidant at others. We're supposed to be their rock. We are not, however, supposed to be their friend. We get stuck there sometimes. We just want them to like us. We want them to be happy. We want them to have more than what we had. We bend, we bow, we buy, we negotiate, but hopefully before it's too late, we figure out that these things are not what we really need. Start talking if you haven't. Talk about work and school and friends and finances and the dog and the project that needs finishing and worries and dreams and joys and fears. Listen to what your spouse or children are telling you. Converse over dinner and chores and in the car. Turn the distractions off. Be calm and really hear what they're saying. Don't think about your response. Just hear them. Stay calm. They may say something you don't want to hear, certainly you don't want to think about or admit to. Don't get upset, don't yell, don't judge, just love them. Whatever's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, for better or for worse, don't stop listening, don't stop loving. One of the hard parts about loving is rules and boundaries. Make them and keep them, always. This is much more difficult to do as a spouse than a parent. You married your spouse intending to be partners. This is a fine line that I'm still learning to navigate. But as a parent, please make these rules and boundaries, these guardrails, if you will. If you're suspicious of drugs or alcohol or pornography, go through their room. You pay the mortgage or the rent, probably walk the furniture in there, and maybe even most of the stuff on the floor that you're walking across. Stop wondering and just go look. Worst case scenario, you stumble across a stash. So now that you know, deal with it. Don't ignore it. Best case scenario, you don't find anything other than moldy dishes and dirty laundry, and though your chore list just got longer, your fears are relieved. If you suspect that they're in trouble online or with their phone, install some safety software, create passwords, write them down and update them. I do this, right, Deacon? My kids throw a fit, but I pay the bill. And even if I didn't, it's worth it to save my kid's life or someone else's. I'm not really concerned about violating their privacy. I'm not in law enforcement, but I'm willing to bet that I won't be arrested for checking my kid's email or text or internet history if I'm truly trying to protect them. And even if I am, so be it. I'm not suggesting you go overboard. Don't ask your child to hand you their phone every time they walk in the door or hover over their shoulder while they're gaming online. But set the boundaries and make them clear so they know what to expect. You want them to be able to trust you and not feel like you don't trust them every waking moment. Explain to them that you're not doing these things to hurt them or to spy on them for your own entertainment. Remember when they were babies and you used to tiptoe over to the crib to make sure they were still breathing? Checking their room or their book bag or their phone is just the way that you have to do that now that they're older. Just as you have since the day they were born, in order to do everything in your parental power to keep them safe. I don't want an officer to escort me into the morgue one day to ID my child and then clean up his or her room a month later only to find all the evidence I would have needed to save them. This may shock you, but in our home there are no TVs or computers in any of the bedrooms. And my children and husband are still alive. We have several computers and televisions in the common areas of our house and laptops that can travel. This makes it easier for me as a parent to monitor and much more difficult for any of us to surf into dangerous areas. Remember the telephones with the cords? I wonder how many cords my dad had to replace because I stretched it out so far so that they could hear me on the phone. It's the same concept. It's not foolproof, but it's just another guardrail. I also have a rule that all electronics are turned off at 10 p.m. This doesn't always include the TV, and this is for the kids, especially on weekends, but there's no reason that any of us have to be up all night gaming or texting or surfing. This is, again, harder to negotiate if you've married a night owl like me. Just one of those things that we need to agree to disagree on. And the kids now, my kids, are old enough to stay up pretty much as long as they want. And they can do that. They can read a book or do homework or sometimes even for a movie binge. But they're still going to get up for school and church on time. And I said church. If you go, and personally, I think you should, take your kids. If they were out late with a friend the night before, remind them that's what Sunday afternoon naps are for. Don't let them make excuses. Do the hard thing. Be the parent. They can go. Inserting my public service announcement here. Let them stay home if they're sick. You know if they really are. The germaphobe here and the school nurse and the pediatricians, thank you. Another disclaimer, even if you are the perfect parent raising the perfect child, things happen. At some point, they may tear down your guardrails and put up their own, or not have any at all. They may completely go against everything you've ever taught them. They may eventually get into trouble, little trouble, big trouble. It happens. Don't feel that you have to rescue them every time. If they get detention in school, I'm guessing it was because they broke a rule. This may not be your rule, but it's a rule nonetheless. Just like that traffic ticket you've received. We all have rules and laws to live by, and we all need to face the consequences. Let your kids face theirs. There's a bigger world out there than the four walls here. One detention for wearing a short skirt that she shouldn't have been wearing in the first place, because you do get the code of conduct every year, is not going to hurt her. Just her pride, and maybe yours. And you'll both get through it and maybe be better for it in the end. If it's your spouse that careens over those guardrails, things get really, really hard. First and foremost, you have to protect yourself and your children. You'll likely need counseling together or separately. Do that. You may need to live separately for a time. If so, do that too. Separation doesn't always have to lead to divorce, but you can give each other the space you need to figure out how to move forward from the ugly space you're in. Hopefully it will lead together. You will need to be very, very patient, even when you don't want to be. You will need to go learn things, as one of my favorite TV characters likes to say. You will need to change yourself while remembering that you cannot change your spouse. And you will need to repeat those things over and over and over again. But if you're willing to put in the hard work, things can get better. Show your kids that bad things can be made good again. Show them that even though giving up may be the easy thing to do, it may not always be the right thing to do. Things may not work out the way you plan on or hope for, but you will be okay knowing that you did the best you could in trying to do the best you could. Personally, I also needed to learn a better art of love and forgiveness. It hurts me to say this, but I did not like Bruce much of the time that he was drinking. I did, however, make the choice every day to love him and forgive him repeatedly. It was so much easier to be sad and angry, and I was very sad and very angry. Sometimes I still am, but it's so difficult to love and forgive. It takes a lot of work and a whole lot more patience, but not doing so and holding on to those negative feelings just hurt me more than it hurt him. So I made a conscious decision to love him anyway. And even when he drank and turned into someone that rubbed my emotions raw, I loved and I forgave over and over and over again. Forgiveness doesn't excuse the action, but it does stop the action from destroying your heart. Today, after several years that included 6 rehabs, a gazillion meetings with counselors, AA groups, and a judge, I'm able to say that Bruce has been sober for 12 months and 12 days. Last week, he invited me to his AA meeting where he was presented with his one-year coin. It has been such a long road from there to here, and I never thought that we'd see the end of it. And in reality, we haven't. We will live with alcoholism forever. I can only pray that the most painful part of the journey is over, and we can now begin to rebuild and restore and move forward. I'm proud of him for finally deciding to take this road to recovery. I'm sorry that I haven't told you that enough, but I'm proud of you and grateful for each day of your recovery. The last thing I would like to share is no matter how you feel, you are not alone. Alone is all I felt for so many years. Most of it was my own making. I rarely opened up or reached out, and I will tell you that this is just a perfect recipe for failure. This is something that I read in another blog recently. It says, sadly, we tend to share the highlights of our lives far more quickly than the low points, or if we share our difficulties, we hide critical aspects of our story. Research indicates that we are frightened of sharing the challenges that we are facing, tending to withdraw and isolate. This isolation, of course, intensifies our problems. I found that we have opposing feelings. The fear of being exposed and vulnerable, people finding out about all of our warts, and the intense desire to expose ourselves and allow others to see us for who we are and show us kindness and acceptance. This inner battle adds to our tension and anxiety. I personally believe that isolation is one of the biggest reasons our family ended up in this disease called alcoholism. Bruce isolated, I isolated, we unknowingly taught the kids to isolate. That being said, my advice to you is this: find a good friend, pastor, a counselor, a small group, an AA or NA meeting, anyone that will listen without judging, anyone that will offer you hope, encouragement, anyone that will just plain hold you together when you feel like you're falling apart. You are stronger than you think. You can get through this, be brave, and tell your story. There's nothing small about it when you tell the broken and the beautiful truth about your life. Don't be ashamed, if for no other reason than to save yourself and to give others the hope they so desperately need. Thank you.